G'day and welcome to the Business Builder's Journey, real stories from owners and senior leaders in the trades, manufacturing, logistics and business-to-business industries. We'll unpack what's worked, what didn't work, and what owners did differently on their journey in business. I'm Phil Badura. Let's get into it. Today, I'm with Shane Connolly, Director at Exit Plan, based in South Western New South Wales. Shane spent 10 years running his own business, Keep It Simple Safety, before exiting last year. Now he helps other business owners prepare for and achieve a successful exit, and ideally a seven-figure one at that. He's the author of Exit Plan, where he breaks down what it really takes to step away on your terms, maximising value, and how to make sure that the next chapter after business is just as intentional as the one before it. Welcome, Shane.
Thanks, Phil. That's a lovely introduction. I wish every time I walked into a room, someone would introduce me that way.
Yeah. Shane, let's talk about, I guess, the journey, the origin, the early wins, and the first lessons. What problem were you solving when you first started Keep It Simple Safety?
I guess there was two problems for me. One was a customer problem and one was a personal problem. The personal one was I found it difficult to work for other people because taking instructions from idiots was never one of my strong suits. And I was never able to keep my mouth in check and just follow the leader. So that was the personal part. But as far as from a business problem, it was really that most people, when they looked at workplace health and safety, were very confused. Most businesses had no clue what to do. There was very little help from the government, and there was a real gap there in personalising the approach and giving people a system to work with in terms of what they needed to do for workplace health and safety. So that was really where it all started. Seems like a lifetime ago now, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so when you think back to, those early days, what was the earliest win that told you that you were actually onto something?
It was, in all honesty, it was the first customer that I got that told me that this could actually work. And I'm still friends with the owner, strangely enough. I started the business with no clue, straight out of contracting to very large companies, and took me must have been, I think it was about a month of knocking on doors and talking to people before I actually got someone to sign a bit of paper to say, yes, we'll pay you money. And that was the first time I thought, thank God, okay, this might not be a complete waste of all of our money. That was really when I thought this might actually work.
Yeah. And in terms of maybe an early win, how would you identify the early win?
Well, the first, because for several years we just did what I would consider the wrong way to do business, which was find a customer, sign a deal with them, do their work, get paid, find the next customer. That was the way we started the business. The first win I had was to find a piece of software that I could deliver with my product and put people onto a monthly program where they paid us every month for our service, a subscription-based.
Nice.
That was really the biggest win early on, because cash flow when you're trying to find customers, get them to pay you, do work, is just nightmarish. And I'm sure everyone will appreciate that if you've been in that situation. So the biggest win for us was to get that subscription model started, because that gave us cash flow, which, as everyone knows, is the king.
Yep, absolutely. I guess flipping it around, what was the earliest mistake that you made that you wouldn't repeat?
You want me to keep this to a short list? I guess the biggest mistake I made early was pricing. I didn't value what we did anywhere near enough. Um, every person I talk to in business now, I just say, put your prices up immediately. I can guarantee you people will pay more. And so that was the hardest lesson for me to learn. And it took the longest, and it cost me the most money. By so far, it's not even funny. You could make 20 other mistakes that don't even come close to how much that cost over the journey.
Yep. Wow. Once you realised that, what was the very next thing you did?
Kept putting the prices up. I I guess for me it was more than a. I mean, some business people talk about it like there's a formula for it. For me, it was how I felt about my pricing. I didn't understand that my pricing was attached to how I valued myself. And so once I understood what I was worth really, then it became much easier to keep putting my price up. And the ironic part for me was that towards the end, I didn't want people working directly with me. And so I put my prices up to like $5,000 a day level. And there were still people who would pay it because of my belief of what I was worth, obviously come through to people. It was weird that I couldn't actually stop people from wanting to work with me, no matter what I was going to put on the price tag. So it was a really an internal battle for me to get past that. Well, I wouldn't pay that. And so once you get past that, it's such a much nicer place to live when you're actually valuing yourself correctly.
A really interesting point, Shane. At what part or point in the journey did you actually realize that, oh, okay, maybe what I am offering is actually worth that sort of money that you were charging?
I wish I could remember the exact time that it happened, but it was a bit more of a journey where it happened. There were two mistakes that I made in that pricing journey. One was I was never I didn't have the right customers to start with. I had customers who were as cheap as me, and that was bad. Um, so, so they thought that my cheap price was still expensive. And that reflected back on me thinking, oh God, I can't put the price up. Second part was that um, we did something that was pretty unique. So I didn't have someone else to go and look at and go, well, this is what they charge. Whereas like if you're a plumber or a builder, you can look at what everyone else is doing and go, well, I can put myself in a different niche and charge a different price, but I know what the general ballpark of what people are charging is. And I didn't really have that at all. I was doing something different from what anyone else had done. And so I kind of was just feeling around in the dark, basically, which is not an ideal way to run a business.
Yeah. And so back in those early days, in terms of that pricing model, and this is really important for every business owner that starts their business, is what price do you charge? When you were working through to find, I guess, that sweet spot, did you increase your prices on a small percentage basis, or what was the process you actually went through?
So I took the approach that we would grandfather all the deals that we had already, because those customers weren't going to pay, because it ended up being about, well, from the starting price, it would be, by the time we exited the business, you were talking like 1,000% increase in price, basically.
Oh,
So
wow.
based on two things. One was we stopped looking for cheap customers. We ended up targeting much multinational company size places where a $50,000 deal is just an everyday occurrence, and they don't really care. So long as they get what they want out of it, the money isn't the key part of the problem.
Mm.
And so you can charge a much different thing to a 5-person business where they're paying, if they got to pay $1,000 a month, that's a big, that's a much bigger issue for them. So, but yeah, our prices went up a ridiculous amount, really, in the end.
Yeah.
Mostly because we would have gone out of business if I'd have kept the same pricing, because I couldn't sustain that. I couldn't deliver what I wanted to deliver for that price point. It just was never the maths couldn't work.
Yes.
We would have always been a, 10 grand a month kind of business, not ever getting anywhere, because I couldn't have employed people and I couldn't have done all the other stuff that I wanted to do.
Yes. Yeah. So, Shane, tell us about some of the hard yards. What was your answer to resilience and real challenges? So, tell us about a tough patch, and then what happened in that first 72 hours.
So I think the worst time for me in business, there were lots of tough patches. Don't get me. I think being in business is tough. The only thing tougher than being in business is working for a bad boss. So, but for me, the worst time was we went through a period where we really tried to expand, and our aim was to become a big company. And I look back now and I realize what we did wrong, and that's a whole other story we can go through. But the main point was that we borrowed money to fund this growth. And we basically got to a point where we realized that it just wasn't going to work fast enough. Like we were going to burn through the money faster than we could achieve the growth that we needed to fund the continuation. So we didn't have the cash flow. And so I sat down one day, we were at about 15 staff at that point. And sat down with a couple of the other people in the business, and I said, this is not going to work, And we let go of 5 people in the next month.
Yep.
And basically shut off, because we were doing recruitment and like several other things. We were going to expand into different areas of income, because that was always one of my issues, was having one stream of income. And so anyway, it was lots of horrible days, let's put it that way.
Yes. Yep.
But the ironic thing is, out of that horror time, made me realize that we were trying to be too many things to too many people. And so what we actually did out of that was we focused we basically dropped doing workplace health and safety, and we focused in just on delivering software and a solution for people. And the irony is that that's what ended up building the company that we could sell for 7 figures, was that approach. Just forget all the other crap and just focus on one thing, do it really well, make as much money as we can out of it. And that was what saved us in the end. So going through that horror time was actually what ended up producing the company that we could sell at the end.
Yeah, so I guess what you're really saying is getting back to the core business and staying focused on the product, the service that remain core to the total business. Would that be correct?
And my advice to anybody would be, so we just tried to go too early. Like the company now would have the ability to expand because it had the cash flow and the profit. We just pulled the trigger too early on that idea.
Right.
So if I'd have still had the drive to keep the business and keep growing, we could have added other segments into the business for sure. But yeah, it was just too excited too early. And yeah, so luckily we pulled out. It's a bit like going into a stall in a plane. You pulled up too quick and the plane stalls, and then you start pointing towards the ground. And luckily we were able to pull up before we hit the ground. But yeah, it was a...
Yeah.
And look...
Yeah, go on.
Resilience, for me, resilience wise, all you can do as a business owner is get up every day and go and keep trying. Like, there's no, I don't think there's any magic to it other than just get up and put one foot in front of the other. One of my favorite sayings is, this too shall pass. Is, the good times will pass, the bad times will pass. None of it lasts.
Mm,
And it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in life, is that it'll pass. It
yes.
doesn't feel like it, but it will.
Yeah, I guess, I liken that to a roller coaster.
Mm.
And, the roller coaster is forever prevalent in both personal and business lives. And it's how you react and respond to, the peaks and the troughs that really makes the difference in how you move forward. So, well done for recognizing that at the time, and then taking the steps and the actions to bring everything back on track again. Let's move on to maybe management and leadership. In terms of management and leadership, Shane, what was the meeting rhythms that you adopted, and why were those rhythms important to the business?
It's just not my strength, I will say up front. I'm I'm a much better ideas person than I am. I, the one thing I know, if I ever built a big company again, I'm not the CEO. So I'll say
Mhm.
that from the outset, because I recognize my strengths, and that's not where my strengths are. But basically, we tried to adopt. One of the things I liked about Action Coach was that the 90-day cycle of planning and implementation. So we tried to adopt that similar kind of approach, where everyone had a 90-day plan, and then we would have more. I think we were doing fortnightly catch-ups. I can't remember exactly, but we basically had the 90-day plan. Then we had meetings in between to catch up on where we were at, and I think giving everyone some kind of direction like that worked really well for us, because everyone knew what they were doing. I didn't have to micromanage people. I think that kind of approach worked really nicely, especially for someone who's not comfortable, managing people all the time.
Mm,
I much prefer people to be self-governing. Here's where I want you to get to. I'm not going to stand over your shoulder, kind of approach.
yeah. So, Shane, taking that scenario into account, how did you ensure that communication within the business was upfront, and everybody understanding what their role, what their part in the organisation was, and then keeping everybody working towards that same goal? How did
Um,
you achieve that?
well, like I said, I like the 90-day plan. Like, we were very upfront with everyone what our overall business goals were, where we wanted to get to, um, and then that filtered down into the 90-day plan. We had 12-month goals, 5-year goals, and then, like I said, it filtered into the 90-day plan, and then everyone knew where their part of that was. Um,
Yes.
and I think having knowing knowing which oar you're pulling on in the boat is helpful. It doesn't suit everybody, I don't think, but for most people that makes for a much easier way to know where they fit
Mm,
into the business.
yeah. And then in terms of rules of the game, I guess, that's the culture that you're trying to achieve in the business. What sort of behaviors did you reward, and the ones that you never walked past?
I'm quite simple when it comes to those things. I think we had, I must pull up that document. We had 10 rules, I think, um, that but the base ones for me were honesty. I'm not, I'm not big on, I'm much more, like I said, that's where I need you to get to. How you get there, provided you're nice to everybody and you're honest, is not the relevant part for me.
Yep.
So that was always my approach. And so, but honesty was the biggest one for me. I don't really, there's a lot of stuff you could do at work and I don't really care. As long as you're meeting your KPIs, getting what you need done, and everyone's upfront, then the only times I ever fired people other than us about to go broke was for dishonesty, because it was the only thing I can't really. Always tried to lead by example and be brutally honest with people. Oh, that's my fault. I did that. Like, show people that it's okay to be honest, because I think a lot of people come from workplaces where, being honest might get you shot.
Yes.
So that was always my biggest thing anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you've mentioned that, you built your team up to, 15. What was some of the key things on how did you attract and then retain the right talent within your type of market?
This is so this was probably the biggest thing that you helped me with when you were my coach, was my personal belief that I couldn't be replaced in the business, which got in the way a lot in the early days of us recruiting. Um, and the just being methodical with your approach to it. Know what you want first. What are you really trying to fill? Not some wishy-washy idea of what the role is, but like, what do you actually want what does this person need to achieve in the business? And then I think it's just been persistent again. Sometimes you advertise for a job and you get rubbish, and other times you get gold. It's not an exact science. You just have to keep trying. Don't accept less just because you can't find what you want, I guess would be my big takeaway.
Yes. Yeah.
You're better off to not have someone in the seat than have someone who is dragging the team down. And so that was something that I struggled with too, was like, well, I've advertised, I've got to employ someone, don't I? And the answer is no, you don't. You've got to get the right person.
Look, that's a really interesting point, Shane, and I actually see it happen too often where people recruit because they need a pair of hands, arms, or legs, and then very quickly they'll find out that it was not the right decision to make. So I guess one of my philosophies is hire slow, fire fast if they're not fitting into the culture, or that their skills and attributes are not fitting to the culture of the business as well.
And the other thing that I learned, and I'm very good at this now, is following your instincts. Two of the best hires that I made weren't based on the person's resume. They were just based on the feeling that I got when I talked to them.
Yes.
And often in life, we're taught to follow the numbers or, go with the facts. But when you're hiring for really key positions, I think you've got to learn how to know your instincts and pick the person based on that. Because ironically, one of the people that we picked based on that, Chris, is the person who ended up buying the business. And so
Right.
if I'd have gone for the project manager who had the better resume, and then we would never be having this conversation probably. So it's ironic how things work out sometimes.
Yeah. No, it's really important is that, when you're recruiting, is making sure that you have the right recruitment process in place and don't take any shortcuts.
No.
Yeah.
No, they're hard to undo that sometimes, those shortcuts.
Yes. Just thinking back through that part of the, or through the journey in the business, Shane, what was an operational change that really moved a number for you, in terms of either lead time, DIFOT, first pass, yield, safety, that sort of thing? Is there anything that comes to mind that, where you've made a decision that's really changed the outcomes for the business?
I think the operational wise, the outside of adding people to the business to do things that I used to do in the early days, the biggest thing that ever changed the needle for us was finding the right CRM at the end. We ended up using Zoho, and it took several goes to try and find a piece of software that worked for us. I was adamant that I knew we needed something that was going to solve that problem of having this conveyor belt that kept going for us. But it took several goes to get that right. And in the end, Zoho was the right piece because it had a lot of bits that you could plug into it that worked for us.
Yes.
But that was probably, and something that could scale with us. And really, Zoho was like putting a V8 in a Mini, but it was better than having the Mini engine in this Land Cruiser. It was like, we kind of, I literally went through about 6 CRMs before we ended up there, just trying to find something that was going to do what we needed. But that, I think once we found that, it opened up more bandwidth for us. There were a lot of things that didn't quite work right until we got that part right. It's hard to explain without a visual diagram, but there were a lot of bottlenecks and blockages, and then once you get the right system in place and set it up right, we actually engaged someone to help us set it up right and help us manage it moving forward. And I've got to say, that was the best $600 a month I ever spent. Because often you buy a piece of software and you only end up using like 10% of its power because you don't understand how everything works. So that was it was probably one of the biggest steps that we made, getting that right. But it wasn't a one-hit wonder, I can tell you that.
So looking back on that part of the journey, what would be the criteria that you would advise business owners to be really considering before diving into, because there's lots and lots of different software available.
Sure is.
What's the process or criteria that you would encourage people to go through first?
I guess first, before you even start thinking about it, go and look at a lot of different software. But this is my process. Maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but because a lot of times you don't even know what you're thinking, what you're talking about before you go and look at stuff. It's a bit like buying a car without ever going for test drives. You need to understand what you're buying first, and then once you've looked at a dozen systems, sit down and figure out what your business needs out of all that stuff that's available. Because I think a lot of times we start off with like a wish list, but then you're trying to fit that wish list into these other systems. And I think, it's like the car's the best analogy I can give you. For me, all the whiz-bang stuff that you get on cars nowadays, all the beeping and the noise and everything is just annoying as hell. I don't want all that crap. I just want it to do what I want it to do. And so when I go and look at a car, I'm not looking for the latest and greatest. I'm looking for what I need. And I think the reason it took us 6 goes to get a piece of software is because I went and looked at it and gone, oh, that's amazing. That's going to be fancy. But it didn't actually do what we needed it to do. And so I made this mistake of looking at all the bells and whistles rather than, yeah, the bells and whistles are nice, but it didn't actually fit our criteria. And it took me a long time to figure out that how to do that process.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, advice for business owners. If you were
Mhm.
to rewind 3 years, what would you do differently? And then what would you do sooner?
I'd do everything sooner. One of the I I have a real conflict in me between planning and running as fast as I can. So I think work fast and break things is a really good adage to use in
Mm,
business. You're better off to take action today, and if it breaks tomorrow, fix it, rather than sit around and plan for 6 months for the perfect thing to do. I was very guilty of that in the early days of doing a lot of thinking and a lot less
mm,
acting. And my advice is it's much easier to fix a breakage than it is to never start in the first place. You'll get a lot more traction with trying to fix things, but you do need a balance. You also need to know where you're trying to go as well. So you can't have no plan, um, but a half-baked plan with action is better than a fully baked plan that never actually gets implemented. So there's finding that balance. I could have, the truth of it is now, if I look at that 10-year journey to build that business, now I could go back and build it in 18 months. I could get to the same point in 18 months because I wouldn't never be afraid of the same things I was afraid of in the first journey. But that's part of learning. So
yeah,
you can't,
absolutely. A
reading a
really,
book doesn't give you that learning.
yes, a really interesting point, Shane, because nothing happens until you've got some momentum.
Mm.
And one of the biggest idea goal killers is, yep, let's call it for what it is, procrastination.
Oh yeah, I was the king. I should have got a crown.
Trying to dot the I's and cross every T before you get started. And yeah, that was one of the things that my coach actually taught me. Phil, just get started. Start something. It doesn't matter if it's not finished or not.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
ironically, people will let you know if you're making mistakes. Your customers will help you fix your mistakes. Um,
Mm,
I I always thought I had to deliver perfection to people, which is so far from the truth. It's not funny. Um, Most of the time, I found, maybe not every industry. Maybe you don't want a plumber coming and making mistakes on site, but in my industry with software and delivering business to business, most customers were happy if I just said, "Oh, that's my mistake. I'll fix that." Don't, like
mm,
owning up to the fact that, well, we haven't done this before, but if you're happy, we'll use you as a guinea pig. And like I became really good at getting customers to help me develop the business. Um, because in all honesty, that's the best way to do it. Do it on the fly. Do it with someone to help you. Do it with a guinea
mm.
pig. Um, and most of the time, people are more than happy to go, oh, yeah, I'll take a 20% discount for you to work with me to develop this new thing that we haven't done before. So I got much better at that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And Shane, just in starting to close up then, what would be the three top bits of advice that you would give business owners who are either considering starting, business owners that may be, well and truly on their journey, and those that are looking to start exiting their business? What would be the best bits of advice you could
probably
pass on?
this Probably the same three bits of advice. Um, you can always charge more money. Um, put your prices up. It's much easier. I learned at the end that you're better to have 500 customers um, who pay you $5,000 than you are to have 10,000 customers who pay you $50. Like the maths just works so much better when you go higher value, lower number of customers.
Yes.
So fix your pricing first and foremost. Um, the second piece of advice is that, and I had never thought about this until later on, was that you will exit from your business, whether it's through circumstances or by choice. So it's better to be in control. There were so many days that I worried about what would happen if I dropped dead in the business, because my wife had no clue. She could have managed the business, like in terms of the zero, but she didn't understand how the business worked. So we never had an asset until the last probably 3 or 4 years, because I didn't understand that at some point you were going to exit. So you needed a plan for that. And the third bit is just don't quit. Don't quit. Don't let those bad days get to you, because it's easy to. You'll have them. I don't care how big your business is, or small. You'll have bad days. Just don't quit. Get up, put your shoes on, and keep going.
Really, really sound advice, Shane. Shane, where can people find you?
So on the easiest place to find me is exitplan.au, just .au, and you'll be able to access my book there. Although you can get the book on Amazon or wherever you want to get your book. It was published correctly, so it's official. And yeah, so jump on there. You can buy the book, or you'll be able to access the course shortly.
Yep.
When I get enough time to finish everything.
And you're on LinkedIn as well?
Yes, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the normal stuff, TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm actually following a journey at the moment of trying to post every day, which is far harder than what people realize. Sounds such an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Great topic for discussion another day.
Yes.
So, Shane, thank you so much for participating in this podcast today. Really appreciate your input. Now, if you're a business owner that's been watching this with a business story that resonates, with the theme of the podcast, and you'd like to be on the show, apply via the link in the information that's going to be down below. I'm Phil Badura, turning business dreams into reality. See you on the next episode.